Happy Easter and welcome to the pastor's midweek message. Here's something I'm willing to bet on. You are trying to use this isolation time as an opportunity to get to all those around the house chores that you've been neglecting. Carolyn has decided to go through all the VHS tapes. Did you know those things are still around? One of our members called and said she needed another lawn. She had done all she can to hers. Here's a word of encouragement as you work through this period of anxiety. This is from Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? I know there's significant fear in your house and in your heart. We all have that anxiety that goes with this COVID-19 scare. But I hope you'll put your trust in God. Let us pray. Dear God, even though we are isolated, we are still connected. While we cannot reach out our hands, we can reach out our hearts. We can reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. We thank you, O God, for the power of your Spirit, which goes where we cannot go. In Jesus' name, amen. Our Up the River story this time is called Hardshell Baptist, and it is presented in honor of my Baptist preacher brother and in memory of my Baptist preacher father. Hardshell Baptist. Ran into a fellow who knows about Western North Carolina. He recalled fondly how in Carolina money grows on the trees, the rivers flow with milk and honey, and the turtles wear neckties. Come to think of it, every good-sized turtle I ever saw up the river was wearing a tie. They were tied round about the neck with a 6-foot length of binder twine. Old Clem Underwood from up on Sunburst used to catch 2 or 3 healthy turtles and hitch them together in a single file and lead them to town on Saturday. He would gather up all the kids and give them turtle rides in the A&P parking lot. After a while, those turtles would completely shut down, wouldn't move an inch. That stubborn streak in turtles is how some church-going folks up the river come to be called Hardshell Baptists. You see, Clem was brother-in-law to the much-esteemed Reverend Zeb Burnett up at Hunger Creek Bible-Believing Church. One Sunday, Brother Zeb took one of them turtles into the church, set it right down on the pulpit. Then he thumped that turtle on the back and said, "This here church is as hard-headed as this here turtle." The idea took. Brother Zeb is gone now, but to this day, there are Hardshell Baptists. When Clem Underwood wasn't catching turtles and entertaining the youngsters, he was educating the masses. Sat around the stove at Garden Creek Mill and Grocery and led discussions on the meaning of life. Got into an argument one day about what was the hardest thing in the world to do. Clem said he read it in a book that the 2 hardest things to do was to climb a fence that was leaning toward you and to kiss a girl that was leaning away from you. Somebody else said it was even harder to change the mind of a Hardshell Baptist. Well, I can tell you right now, neither one of those fellas ever tried to get on a horse with a snake in his hand, but that's another story. Changing the mind of a Hardshell Baptist. I reckon that would be an all-day job. A fellow would have to pack a lunch. if he set out to change some of those folks at Bible-believing church. But stubbornness of mind is not something the hard-shell Baptists have cornered for their own self. Most folks up the river are hard-headed, and that's being generous. Bob Taylor from over on the other backside of the river is hard-headed and a know-it-all to boot. In fact, he's the worst kind of know-it-all. You know the worst kind of know-it-all? Well, one that knows it all. Bob Taylor could talk for hours about anything and everything. One day the men at Garden Creek Mill and Grocery were talking about chinky pins. Wondered where chinky pins came from. Someone said, "Here comes Taylor, we can ask him." Someone else said, "I don't want to know that much about it." Old Bob got into an argument with a fence post on Judge Penner's farm. Nobody knows the outcome of that set to, but folks thereabouts say Bob wore that fence post plumb down to peaked impeccable. Some folks say the hard-shell Baptists aren't much so hard-headed as they are just principled. They know what they believe and they're sticking to it. Well, I reckon if a fella already knows it all, it don't make much sense to go changing your mind. Now, concerning that fella and his notion that in Carolina money grows on trees and the river flows with milk and honey, I've never seen it, but that don't mean it ain't so. I asked Mr. West, who works behind the counter at the Garden Creek Mill and Grocery, and he said, "I reckon that's an exaggeration." Exaggeration. Now there's a word you can shake a stick at. Told Granddad I was thinking about writing a story about exaggeration. And you know what he said? He said, "Boy, you should leave well enough alone."